Back in the U.S., he created Watermelon Man in 1970 for Columbia Pictures. And after that, in 1971, with earnings from Watermelon Man, financed Sweet Sweet That's Badass song. This is a film which he produced, directed, and starred in. This 1971 classic was the first film of its time, combining the street sensibility, avant-garde imagery, and black blood and militancy. Sweetback was and is considered controversial and revolutionary, both in its political and sexual content, because some of his editing and music techniques have been absorbed into mainstream Hollywood film language. Sweetback is considered a seminal work not just in black film, but in American cinema. Over the past few years, he's worked a good deal with his son, Mario Van Peebles. He's also worked on Broadway and in television. Most recently, on Monday night, he was featured in Girlfriend and will be again on November the 7th, so come visit. It's on UPN. In passing, he was involved in commodities trading with the first black trader on the American Stock Exchange, and has received 2 Grammy nominations for the Ain't Supposed to Die, a Natural Gas cast album. He's done everything, right? So we are very, very fortunate to have him. We're here with us this afternoon to do the second in the Elaine Leroy Locke lectures. And I forgot the most important thing, which is available after the lecture, is the Badass Bible for Survival, which Mr. Van Peebles will happily sign for you. $8.
By the way, the Badass Bible for Survival, let me tell you from the giddy up, it's empty. Because you are supposed to put the other part in. Huh? See, I believe in us. I believe in the possibility of the mind and what we can do. And it's pretty easy to lay it off on somebody else. Oh, you decide for me, or you tell me, etc., etc., etc. But I'm sure you've already figured out what today's lecture or discussion will be about. Of course, it's about the anthropological line between then and now, and how anthropology or our zoological things shape whatever we are, whatever we've done. That's what pyramids and Porsches have in common. But before that, because you're my friends, right? I'm just going to tell you the real deal, etc., etc. I want to talk a little bit about human nature in one of its most current and overriding forms. That is, we like to hedge our bets. When you're standing on a corner and you're waiting for the date, part of you is standing there, but the other part of you, in case she doesn't or he doesn't or it doesn't show up, you're saying they aren't going to come, they are not going to come. We have to learn to fight that negativism. If you're going to do something, go ahead and do it for 100%. Case in point, I'm sitting here minding my own business, and an old girlfriend shows up. And what does she say? I know you don't remember who I am. Well, you don't remember my name. I said, no, I don't remember your name, but I do remember. I was getting ready to run a Boston Marathon one day, my first Boston Marathon, and the lady made me some sweet potato pie. And I broke 3 hours, which I'd been trying to do. That's up there with the big boys, you know, as old as I was, to break 3 hours because of that sweet potato pie. And I never will forget that pie. Now, you all may think I'm lying, but I am telling the truth. Young lady, would you stand up, please? Yeah, you, okay. Now, no, what you got? I got a question for you. Stand up. Now, what's your name that I can't remember? Oh, I knew it. I knew it all the time. I was just seeing if you knew it. You know? This is what we do as human beings, folks. We just got to go. Obi-Wan Kenobi said it. You understand what I mean? Go with the flow. All right, now. Well, he did. Wasn't that Obi-Wan Kenobi who said that? Huh? Go with the flow. I promised yesterday that I was going to try and make us all clairvoyant. Well, the most important part in clairvoyancy is to take yourself out of the project, out of the problem, out of the equation you're trying to solve first. And don't even think about thinking about it, because it'll just move yourself out immediately. Solve the problem for someone else, then put yourself back in, or put your predilections and decide. And because you're trying to improve on yourself, you're trying to tell yourself, well, that makes sense, doesn't it? So what you want to do is always take yourself out. Now, there's another clue, another thing that can help a great deal, and that is if you listen to the past. Not the past as in tradition, which has its own cultural imprint depending on the culture that you come from. But you listen to the past also from where the rubber meets the road, from the root of our evolution. What does a pyramid and a Porsche have in common? Outside, they both start with P. Well, they are both tactics that we are slave to because we don't even know where they're coming from. You want to get yourself a Porsche, so you got your bling bling, you get your bling bling, you or he or she can get laid. Now, you don't understand why is that, but that is part of procreation that's not your fault. It's been in there the whole time. So you got to understand it for what it is. Why do you want to build a pyramid? A pyramid guarantees the one thing, guarantees you hope, immortality, which is part, again, of the evolutionary genius and light bulb of humanity. See, here's what happened. For zillions of years, we come out with just slime in the sea, etc., 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 and slowly we become chimpanzees, with the 24 chromosomes. And I find it very interesting that the lower apes and the others have 24 chromosomes, and we only got 23. So that's a very interesting situation. So maybe we are less than the other ones who don't remember anything. Are you following me? We have 24 chromosomes. The great ape have 24. We have 23. We have less than the things that are close to us. Now, here's what's happening. In every decision you make, you are making that decision superficially from your immediate culture, from your immediate needs. But that culture and that need is predicated on tradition, is predicated on past tradition. How did the tradition become a tradition? The tradition became a tradition as a survival technique for the Homo sapiens. Everybody with me so far? All right, okay, so let's take another instance of antlers. Why? I was just looking on the television the day where a moose got his ass shot by an 11-year-old. The biggest moose that an 11-year-old ever shot, and he's got all these antlers. Well, he's just a victim of evolution. In other words, deers and some of these other animals, antlers have grown larger than they need to be. Why? Because at one stage of the game, the female, when she has to choose a male, she tries to choose one with the larger antlers because he can better forage for food. So the thing gets out of whack that you got the bigger antlers, so forth. And so the antlers grow where now they're a pain in the ass. The antlers that big, you can't work as good. But we still don't remember that. I mean, there's no way of remembering why the the lady deer will go to the guy deer or the moose, etc., etc., etc. The same thing if you don't know why, but you do know it works if you got yourself a Porsche and you go through the hood, and the lady may not like him, but he's got the Porsche, and she doesn't realize that she is responding to one of the very other interesting problems of Homo sapiens, a particular problem. The normal mammal doesn't, all the other mammals have a much shorter family life. They have a much shorter family life. And because they have a shorter family life, it is not as crucial the picking of a mate, because you have to have a mate who's going to have to help you go out and get the berries or run down the dinosaurs, because you cannot keep the child and go out and do the hunting. So that has, again, in part of evolution, has made it necessary for the woman to be very cautious, and what is we like to call it, well, jealousy, etc., etc., is only a smartness of tactics. If I have children with him, will you abandon the children off somewhere else? One of the interesting aspects of motherhood as far as Homo sapiens, that is, human beings, motherhood toward that is, everybody understands the mother's love. But there's a second part that gets very little attention, and that's masculine guilt. Now, given what I've said so far, what is the origin of masculine guilt? Would anybody tell me that? Oh, come on, goddammit, somebody know. And I've never heard this discussed. These are my cockamamie theories, okay? The idea is the masculine guilt is also just as essential for the male to guard and bring home the dinosaur bones for the female. Otherwise, he may be getting over, but there will be no evolution of the race, or there would be no continuation of the race, of the whole species. Therefore, when a gentleman acts ugly, he should normally, if we just follow the trajectory, a guy wants to get all he can, and a woman wants the safety for the kids, but they had to factor in, he has to have this sense of love for his kids also. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. The species would have died off long ago. So that's the origin, in my estimation, of the guilt. Now, okay, I walk into a studio, and I'm trying to raise money for a film. The guy may or may not give me a hard time in direct ratio to how threatened he feels by my presence as a competitor. He doesn't mean to be this way, because that's sort of primitive. But there's something going on all of the time. There's something going on, and unless we recognize all of these things, we we don't quite, we're in a storm which we don't know which way the wind is coming from. I'm going to just throw another little thing at you. It's so funny. You realize kleptomania, everybody knows what kleptomania is, right? Kleptomania didn't really start until they started having fixed prices. True. I mean, people would steal, etc. But kleptomania, the stealing in the stores and so forth, because part of what we have is the desire to compete, to do things. And if you were allowed to haggle with somebody in the marketplace, even if you paid more for it, you felt that you'd done something, you felt you'd gotten over. When the need to have a sense of self was denied by one way or another, was taken away, in all sense, it made a lot of sense by having things marked, people began to steal. Isn't that interesting? That's when kleptomania came in. That was a factor that they didn't even have in the Middle Ages. It came in with fixed prices. So all of these things, you have to think back. So now let's go back to our clairvoyant. We're going to all end up being able to have Ouija boards and seances when I finish with you, I swear to God. What happens is, this is another important thing that you should factor in every understanding of everybody every time, because they may not understand it, but they are ruled by it. They are ruled by it on maybe 12 or 200 spaces removed, but it is all about the survival situation. It's all about owning the world. Now, there's another thing that happens, very unfortunate. When suddenly people began to wake up and say, where am I, who am I? We got the sense of consciousness that is one of the uniqueness of the Homo sapiens. When we got that sense of consciousness, we wanted then to understand where we were. I mean, it's just like suddenly you wake up and say, where am I? Well, when this lily or a Picanthus erectus or something woke up, this sudden waking up has taken zillions of years, okay. But when he suddenly wakes up, we need to explain things. And one of the things, nobody likes the unknown. So once you come to an answer of something, so well, that's like when the everything moved around the earth. That made sense. And because one of the greatest reasons it made sense, it put you at the center of everything, which is one of our human arrogances. However, whenever you come to an idea that makes a slight bit of sense, it begins to get encrusted like Baroque music. It begins to get encrusted with things that say, of course this is. Of course this is. I was speaking yesterday about the use of the moviola. Now what's happening, you remember the whole thing was about connecting the dots. So you all got to connect the dots now. You understand what I'm saying? But I'm trying to give you the keys, connecting the dots, and that can be so much fun when you think of things, when you're connecting the dots. When you're connecting the dots. The racial issues, why everybody knows now, oh yeah, why the Africans are darker because that made more sense here, and da-da-da-da. I mean, there was a guy once who, he died and he went to heaven and he was talking to Jesus, and he said, Lord, why did you make me black? He said, well, you know, the dark skin was the protection against the sun, and the long arms just so you could swing through the trees better and get away from your enemy, and your legs just so you could. They say, yeah, I understand that shit, but why was I born in Detroit? You know, things happen, and so when we get out of whack, I tell you, you have to go back a while. you have to go back a while. Like you have to understand the cold, and why you have a Mongolian fold. That's with protection against the cold. And as people move around, these things have changed. And we try, if you don't go all the way back, you try and come up with short answers for stuff. You try and call it. One more little story. There was this happened the other day, down in New Orleans. There was the sheriff went around and told everybody to get out of town. The guy says, he says, one guy wouldn't go. He was a major Christian. He said, "No, I'm not leaving." He says, "God's going to look out for me." And then the next thing, this guy, the water starts to rise, and he was a guy in a rowboat. Come by and says, "Come on, get in. The water's rising." No worry, God's going to look out for me. And so then, the next time, it's a helicopter coming along, and they're dropping out. "All right, hello, come on, here, get on, all right, come on out." He says, "No, I'm not moving. God's going to look out for me." Next time, guy falls overboard, he drowns. And he goes to heaven because he's been a good Christian boy and so forth. But he is mad. He said, "I want to see God." He said, "That'd be busy." He finally comes, he storms into God's office, and he says, "God," he says, "listen," he says, "I said you were going to look out for me, and look what happened." God said, whoa, slow your roll. He said, "I sent the sheriff, I sent the rowboat, I sent the helicopter." So what out of me? Okay, now I'm through talking. I'm not through talking. That's a lie. That's not what I mean by it. What I mean is, we're going to open up the floor to discussions and questions, and I will try and explain through my vision the answer to whatever the questions is and why and what it means. I will have to tell you that I'm in the wonderful position of liking myself. I get along with Melvin very well. I have no illusion about it. "Melvin, you're a basic piece of shit." Okay, all right. Once I've agreed to that, then I don't have to be who I'm not. And when I answer you, I'm not going to try to answer if I were this or who you think I am. I'm going to answer you, or we're going to discuss it like who I actually am. And I have a cockeyed optimist as far as the intelligence and the wonder of each one of us. Sometimes you're listening to people and they're no, let's don't go there. Let's just talk about things. Anything that you want to know. The first question I'll answer, a lot of young girls in the thing, so I want to answer the first question about that. Mario's not married, okay? So let's get that one. That was always the first question. Okay, who's got a question? And yesterday, I asked that a young lady asked the first question, but today, anybody can ask the question. Paula, what do you got? I see you sitting there. You got something in your mind. Speak up. What your daughter, if she were here, what would she say?
My daughter, thank you for remembering the name. She would love it to be here. But I think
You stand up, honey bunny, because they can't hear you.
okay. He remembers my daughter's name, Paula.
Oh, but now 1 second. Okay, let's just stop. I remember her daughter's name. I'm slow-eyed. You know what slow-eyed is? Because with your physical attributes help an awful lot. I always look like I'm asleep. That's great, man. Don't woke them, let them sleep. You know what I mean? So people can underestimate me. Now, most people don't jump up in the face and, no, but let yourself be underestimated. That's the best thing you can do. Huh? That gives you all kind of extra power. Just lay in the cut. Yes, I remember your daughter's name. She's in Spain. Okay.
Mr. Van Peebles yesterday was very, very generous with me. He not only signed the book, his book, that I asked to sign, but also I asked from him an extra line because my daughter would like to direct movies, and she's going through this difficult time where she doesn't know whether she has got the aptitude and the attitude, both the two things. She loves movies, but she knows it's hard, she's struggling there. And I listened to Mr. Van Peebles mentioning this do or die. Okay, dig it. And then I love that line, and I asked him, please, to write that line for her, because I think it would encourage her a lot. And because his films, his cinematography means a lot. He's a fan. So I don't know if she would be. I'm thinking of her all the time because I love movies, but I'm into literature. But I teach film and movies. But if she would be sitting here, she would be just expecting to hear from you whatever you have to say. You say you're easy, but I'm sure she will look at you as you're here on this pedestal, right? Like this very important person in film, not only African American films, but in films.
Well, great. Okay.
In general.
Well, you see, now this is a mother. Let's go back. We're going back to the very most primitive thing. She has a child. She's trying to bring the child along, etc., etc. We're just cutting back through the levers which allowed us to be who we are as human beings at this stage of the game. This was a simple. Thank you very much, ma'am. This is just a simple explanation of what we're talking about. So, but when you look at your opponent, your friend, your whoever, and when you look at the most important opponent, friend, the mirror, be aware of all of these entanglements that are clouding or inspiring your judgment. That's the point. Next question, please. Yes, ma'am.
Hi. You talked a lot about your competitor and knowing what's always going on in their mind. Could you maybe share some examples with us of some situation which you were in trying to get a movie made and you had to deal with or go through some or one of your competitors?
Well, before I do that, let me discuss being aware of the situation. Being aware of the situation is very, very important. When I watch the porno channels and everything, people are always getting these, what do you call these, breast enhancements. And people are going ape over that, and guys are looking at this, and it never was very interesting to me, the breast size. So I back off and I say, well, why is that? And the answer, when I really dug down into my psyche, etc., the answer was, my mama had 6 sisters. And they all were 40 D cups, etc., and we'd go to church on Sunday, her and all the sisters, and I'd look down this row, and of these heaving breasts, you could get seasick. And afterwards, I was supposed to be a minister. This is how I was scheduled to be a minister, because what happened was I was the first grandchild, and that was very small. And after the church, I would sit in mortal terror every Sunday, because I was going to die. I knew I was going to die at the end of the service. I never did die, obviously, but I thought I was going to die because afterwards all my aunts would swoop down on me and hug me. And none of that turn your head. I mean, boom, you and that'd be a line of aunts. That'd be a line of these 40D cups before I could catch my breath. The next one would get me. Except my mama had one aunt, Aunt Bert, who was sort of flat-chested. And so I would always arrange to get Aunt Bert in the middle. You know what I mean? That's 1, 2, 3. You know what I mean? 4, 5, 6. Okay. One Sunday, Aunt Bird was sick, and I went from one 40D cup to the next one without any break, and I fell out, boom, and fell on the church because I had hyperventilation. Look, that's a sign from the Lord. He's going to be a minister. Swear to God. So that was my first major job, how I had to try to do with Aunt Bird. When I walk into a, let me see if I can take a very concrete situation. Okay, yesterday, well, I'll try and take one that won't refer to yesterday because some people weren't here. When I went to Hollywood with my first 3 films, my first short films in 1957 that I made these little films that I taught myself. And I presented my films, and I was told that I didn't have what it took to be a filmmaker, et cetera, and I had no one to ask. I had no second opinion because filmmaking was not as it is now. It was really a very small or very closed society, and a closed male white society. I didn't know anybody. I just had to take the person's word for it. And so I went off to do a different world. That's why I went to study celestial mechanics, which is a type of astronomy. But why did they do that? Okay, now, the mind is faced sometimes with problems. When the first indentured people came to the States, which was not even the States at that stage of the game, they were not in slavery, white or black. But then it became quite lucrative if you could keep the black people in slavery. And it was quite easy to differentiate the black people from the white people. However, the country was founded on ideas of equality for all. How you going to get around that? What was the answer to that? The answer to that was, they're not human. They're only 3/5 of a human being. That's why, at that juncture, let's go back to what I was talking about, how you build on a thing to try and make it look more solid. And so people were taught that the minorities, the people of color, were not quite up to the snuff of white people. So therefore, that allowed you to keep 2 sets of books. The books, we're all about God and love, et cetera, and these people ain't quite there. Now, the real top people probably guessed that and probably understood that, but it allowed you to kick somebody's ass, or hold them in bondage, or rape the women, and even take your children, your half-human children, and put them in bondage, et cetera. And this, once again, began to make sense. That way, you could have slavery and sleep at night. That sleight of hand is the origin of racism. It was the origin of racism, not tribalism, because you're going to have tribalism. I was in a bar once in northern Italy. The northern Italians say the same thing about the southern Italians. I was in a bar once, and a guy said, "We don't like them. This is a different place. They carry knives. They don't want to work. They smell different." I said, "Who?" And he said, "The Indonesians." I forgot he was talking and speaking in Walloon. He was speaking, but it was the same old shit. But the guys that told me I couldn't direct were responding to an antipathy they felt toward myself, that they, not me personally, but there was a whole tribalism of this that had a whole racism that had been built up and built around. Even everybody talks about the Constitution and blah, 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 blah. Remember, if you look in the thing now, you're only 3/5 if you're a minority. I remember, slight digression, I was almost turned into a drunk once upon a time, because I was in the Air Force, and I was the only black officer in my squadron. And we were flying, I was a navigator flying these jet bombers, B-47s. And you go into the officers club, I had to quit going to the officers club. I'd go into the officers club, and guys, I was just a lieutenant, guys, come here, lieutenant, come here. Come on, son, have a drink. Well, no, have a drink. Yes, major or captain. And the guy would tell me, he said, "You know, my father, we never said much about Negroes and so forth." That's what we call them down there. Don't mean no problems. But, you know, I saw your black hands working that radar just like a white boy. You understand? Have another drink, son. And I'd give him absolution. He leave. The next white guy would line up, and there'd be a whole line of them waiting for the absolution. I almost turned into a drunk. Then even worse than that, when the guys, when these people would drop into their drawers and finally say, hey, they saw what they had been told was not true. They would then say, "Come on over here and dance with my wife." No, man, now he's giving me the greatest thing in the world. The southern white guys asked me to dance with his wife. She usually looked like Quasimodo, couldn't dance or something, but I'm going to. This guy has made the biggest step forward he could ever make by offering me his white lady to dance with. You know, and she'd step all over my damn feet and shit. You know what I mean? Yeah. Then the next guy would line up, and this is how I almost became a drunk. But these are the things, the people, when I came back to the States and won the festival, they had no recollection of how they had been conditioned to look at us, to look at a minority, or to look at themselves, or to look at the other thing. The people were actually able, and this is what's very important if we're going to be clairvoyant. This is what's very important. We can start believing. You have to track down every belief. You have to track down and understand every belief. I have to track down and find out why I didn't like or care too much about breast enhancement. But it was sitting there back in my history. I just had to go and find it. I mean, you know, what happens. You will run gender-wise, region-wise, accent-wise, nation-wise, into all of these things. But don't be confused by this just happening at this level right to you. It's much, much deeper. And if you look past it, you can then figure out most of the time, now where's the crack in this mama so I can get through it? That's when I deal with the French. You have to just know certain things about them. One of the great American things about the French is how they're very arrogant and so forth. The real truth of the matter is they have an inferiority complex. When I went to France and as a beggar, as poor, everybody would invite me home immediately. But they didn't assume that their house was going to be worse than the pavement that I was sleeping on. And so but you have to understand, half of the time when people were rioting, and half the time we had the uprisings, the black folks thought that a white lady who had a job actually had a home like Mary Tyler Moore. They didn't realize it, but they had no way of knowing. I mean, when I was a kid, Mama says, "Hey, Melvin," I remember when I was in school and I saw a black kid, a white kid sitting next to me cheat. They did that too? I mean, he was cheating on the test, you know what I mean? God, I don't know why. Because every time I did something wrong, my mother says, "Melvin, don't act like a nigger." So I assumed that's how niggers acted, huh? I didn't know that they had, but they had no chance, no proximity, no opportunity, the proximity to understand just the realities of human beings. The guy in the Air Force had no chance to ever see a person of color handle the radar. And some people, once they see that, can leap over it. Some people become more violent, want to hold on to their predilections, their thoughts, and that shapes and that colors the entire idea of what people do. Everything keeps going. You can trace the whole thing back. Why you have to be stealth that's the way you get things done. For example, I mentioned running. When you run in a group, 10 or 15 guys, it's much easier than when you're running alone until it's time to break away. I mean, it's just like it sort of hits back in the old DNA, ding, and you can just see when you're running in a group how things work better, how things work differently, how things work other. Yes?
I was just curious about what you thought, given what you had said about evolution and direction and how people are progressing. I was wondering what your thoughts were on the relationships between black men and black women and how that is changing, moving as we go forward in time.
Or how it's changing and moving. I don't know how it's changing and moving, or which, because there are a lot of equations, a lot of things in the equation. But at one stage of the game, if you want to take the contrarian point of view, which I'll come to in the second part, so remind me of that, the idea was to split the family, that the people could just be, they were just cattle. And we have not, especially in America, we have not recovered from that splitting, that idea of they were just, the family love was looked upon as trafe, was looked upon as something pretty bad you didn't want to have around, because you're going to have to move this child over to here and move this one over there and move this one over there. And that continual breakdown of the family for 400 years has had repercussions that we're still living with very strongly today. And it'll be very interesting to see how that plays out. For example, you can go to some of the Caribbean islands where there's been a different sense of unity able to evolve. And when you said black man and black woman, I assume you meant American, because it's quite different in each nation, in each tribe, how these things have evolved. For example, when I started with this musical idea of the rap, etc., I had not envisioned that the music would go through a phase where it was only about nookie or guns. However, it's a simplistic phase which plays into the hands of the oppressor. And so it is encouraged. And since if you don't know history, you're doomed to repeat its failures. Many of the kids are blinging their way right into the understand with this bitch, that bitch, etc., etc., which is really very detrimental, which is really detrimental to the whole over thing. And the thing I'm trying to do, I've always tried to do, was to get in our hands the minorities or the people of goodwill, the mode to be able to express where we're coming from, not what somebody decides they want us to be coming from. And that's been the task. You know, for example, a guy pointed out to me in Sweetback, it was the first time a youthful, a virile black guy was allowed to have facial hair. You know, think about it. Unless the hair was the color of mine now, it turned white, you weren't allowed to have facial hair in a movie. And all of these things, what has happened in music is no different than what had happened before in other things. And it is a part of keeping us is so simplistic. When I almost said us meaning us poor black people. No, please. It is the haves in a certain capitalist society using it a certain way to keep the have-nots or the medium haves out of the major part of the mix. It's just good business. After I made the money with Sweetback, of course, I was ostracized. I was not allowed to make movies. I've never had a movie job to make a movie as a director offered to me yet since then. Because I've had people come to me and say, well, let's do this. Let's take the franchise of the name and have them do Amos and Andy. Do you know what I mean? No, but it's the same, this. So I said, I'd rather drink muddy water and sleep in a hollow log. But there is the bling bling associated with it. And this is only good business. And the Coolidge said, the business of America is business. That's what America about, and that's what most of the things are about now. However, it's getting to be a little short-sighted, the globalization and the nationalization. We're going to end up flying up our own asshole if we're careful. But that's not just in race. That's going to little by little be around. I mean, for example, when they held the African in bondage, they did a very clever thing. I mean, it was terrible and all that, but it was very clever. They made them all speak one language. They got them even to believing into their God. Now, that was a terrible thing, but the problem with the terrorism that we're having today is that they should have taken a page out of the slavery handbook, because when the other countries they wanted slavery, but we called it immigrant workers to come in. They left the immigrant workers, but they left the immigrant workers they weren't as clever as the Americans. They left the immigrant workers with their own religion. So they had a place to rally around. And religion is very, very powerful. And so the terrorists can rally around Islam. If they had said, okay, you can come over here now, but you got to start being Catholic or Protestant, whatever it is, and speak this language, then that would have been, that we wouldn't have the bombings. Of course, it's reprehensible, but we wouldn't have the bombings now. We wouldn't have the bombings now. myself, let me explain to you. Everybody saying, well, where is Melvin? This religion. I'll explain to you what happened to me. And going back to these aunts and everything, I was a very, what do you call it, a very nervous child. And I never gone more than 2 feet from my mother in public up until I was 6 years old. I'd always be right there by my mama. And we were in a church, a huge church in the south side of Chicago. It had over 2,000 members, you know, and every Sunday you had Jesus in big stained glass, and you had to walk. I mean, it was great. And we had a great minister. He was a light-skinned guy with blue hair and everything. It was wonderful, you know. And it came time for me. I said, I want to join church. Because the minister would every Sunday he would say, okay, if you're not born again, your eyes are gonna fall out, your teeth are gonna fall in, maggots will eat your ears, and blah 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 blah, and brimstone is this, and it burns and it smells. Who wanted that? You know what I mean? You gotta be born again. I'm a little kid. I'd be there every Sunday. And I said, whoa, huh? So one Sunday I told it, and my mama made me a little white suit, the short pants, etc., the little skinny legs, come on, you short pants. And they sang, what's the song about little children? Let the little children come unto me. How's that song go? Jesus loves me, this I know, because of my bone. And when they sang this song, okay, I got up. That was the time when all the kids would join. I got up, and I ran to the back of the church, which it had to be at least long, long way from my mama. I'd never been with my mom before. And I got in line with the other little children. And then we come in, and the minister says, oh, here, and look, Deacon Griffin, my grandpa, Deacon Griffin's little grandson is here. He's joining us. Amen, son, with all the other little children and so forth and so on. And he gives me my little envelope to put your money in. They start you early. You know, he gave me a little envelope to put my money in. And they kissed and hugged me and all the other little kids. All right. So then I went back, and that evening my aunts and my mom and my dad and everybody cooed with this over me, and I was the star. It was wonderful. Except that night, I got worried. I didn't feel any different. And when the Lord gets you, you're going to feel different. Life is going to change. But I didn't feel any different. So all week long, I was shitting bricks, excuse the expression. All week long, you know. And you've been told, if you try and lie to the Lord, He's going to see you and you're going to get it double. So, oh, man, whoa. So what happens is, the next Sunday, Jesus loves me, this I know. And the children starting to come down and come past my, I leap up and get in line again. And God, he said, oh my, he said, look here, Deacon Griffin's grandson says, well, son, better to be there. And the people in church all smiling and laughing there. And I joined church again. Nothing happened that week. By now, oh boy, you know, I'm frightened. But I can't, who am I? I can't tell. Because you're going to feel different. The Lord is going to walk. So, third Sunday, this is honest to God truth. This is what I, third Sunday, Jesus loves me, designer. They're coming past again. They're coming past again. And when they get to me, I leap up and get in line again. The church starts to howl. Everybody's laughing and screaming. The church howls. And I get in line, oh, look at it. Well, son, you're really right on it. And he goes over me, blessing all the kids and giving this thing. He gets to me, and he bends over, and he grabs my cheek and says, little nigga, I don't want to see you up here again. Swear to God. Of course, Mama said, what did the Reverend say? Now look, I was born at night, but now last night, even at 6, I knew I'd get my ass kicked if I said, you know what the minister said to me? Nothing, Mama. So that was my church affiliation. That's how much I deal with the church. I I learned my lesson quite early. Okay, next question, please. Yes, sir.
You're kind of talking about already the whole notion of fake it till you make it.
I'm sorry?
That whole experience of faking it till you make it. It's like this. It sounds like it's a strategy for trying to connect those dots, or trying to come up with new dots to connect. Can you talk a little bit about how that experience sort of has worked in your professional life, when you have no clue what's going on, and then all of a sudden it's completely different people, and you have to somehow make it up as you go along. You just have to rip.
Well, what happens is I lucked out. I mean, there was no ambiguity. There was nothing unclear. And so getting the thing I'm most familiar with is the unknown, because I kept getting thrown into situations where it was sink or swim. And so after a while, I went to a school. When I went to school, I was there were burning crosses on the lawn at that stage of the game. My parents, we moved out to a neighborhood that didn't want people of color or anybody else, etc. But it bought the home. So I never had any companions. So you learn to make do with yourself. That was the only person I could count on. And it was very harsh, but years later, I mean, once in college, they sent me to what they call Coventry in English. That is where no one spoke to me for a year. And I felt very sad for them being denied my entertainment. You know what I mean? I realize now it was supposed to be other, but hey, I didn't. But so it wasn't. It would be nice to say, well, I figured this out, et cetera, et cetera. That's not what happened at all. That's not what happened at all. It happened just in the reverse. So, but then when people now do those things, it doesn't bother me because I didn't. It's like if you never had them, so there's nothing to lose. And that has enabled me. For example, let's discuss a sweetback. When I did the movie, now it's Museum of Modern Art Restoring and all that, only 2 theaters in the entire United States would show the movie. Only 2 theaters. And the first night, did anybody see Badass? My son's Badass. The first night, the first 2 people who walked into the theater, it was a Wednesday afternoon. A woman was about 60, 70, and her daughter, and her mother. So the mother was about 85. My first 2 customers, and I'm standing there. 20 minutes later, they came back out and asked for their money back. And in desperation, I did something, since the newspapers, the reason the movie is spelled Badass, B-A-A-D-A-5-S, is you couldn't put any word like Dawn or something in the paper at that time. So I misspelled it and told them it was a French word. That's why, literally, that's why it's spelled like that. You got to make do. You got to do what you got to do. But since I did not have the money, now it's going to be hard for you to understand this. It's so ubiquitous. It makes such good sense. Since I didn't have the money to buy a 15-second ad on the radio, but this is where there's a lapse. If I had been taught about cinema or how to market, I would have never done this because I wasn't the way I'd been taught. But since I wasn't taught, you just had to use what you call common sense. That's what happened. However, then when the show worked, because I asked for another thing, I asked that my show be shown first run. And I don't know if you know what that means, but that means black movies were not shown first run, even Sidney Poitier. That means they weren't shown alone. They had always a second feature. And I said I wanted my movie shown first run. and there are twins in Detroit, Michigan, called the Goldberg twins, who ran the theater, and they took my film, and they had not opened the mezzanine in 15 years. But through the use of music, now I'm going to tell you something now, and it's true. I hate to tell, I don't mind being called a liar when I'm lying, but it really is a drag when you're telling the truth and you're being called a liar. This is the truth. I found this group called Earth, Wind, and Fire, and I wrote the music and they played it. But how did I find Earth, Wind, and Fire? One of my secretaries knew one of the guys. And so there how all these things just go along. That's what happened. Then when that began to work, it began to show all over the United States. But every place I went, every time, they said, it was a fluke. Huh? Wait until it gets to Detroit. I mean, wait until it gets to Chicago. Well, it did well, but that's a fluke. Do a fluke. They couldn't believe it. By the time people woke up and Sweetback had become number one, the next phase set in. That is, Shaft was a white movie originally in pre-production. Then when they stopped it and cast it black, and that's how and that's how Shaft, and that's how blaxploitation got started. However, once that happened, Sweetback was never shown foreign. For all these years, it's just within the last 7 years that Sweetback has been shown foreign. Because if an independent film makes it, then there are people who pick it up and then they sell it foreign. They, meaning the structure, the business structure, did everything to keep Sweetback from being shown foreign. Not for any other reasons other than it was an independent film and they had other things to do. I had offers to show it for free because of this. I said, I'll use it for toilet paper first. But you've got to stick to your guns. Yes, sir.
Is it true that...
Please stand up, sir, so they can hear what you're saying.
Is it true that your movie earned $10 million?
Sweetback, it earned a little better than that. Yes. Yep. Yes, it did. And I got no partners. People say, "Oh, Melvin, you're brilliant. You're bullshit." I begged everybody to come in with me. Nobody would come in with me. That's how I earned it. Yeah. And I had borrowed money from some of my friends who, if I didn't pay them back, would have killed me. But no, business is business. They said, "Hey, man, we can't have it on the street where you can borrow money and didn't pay mine." You understand what I'm saying? Yeah, I understand what I'm saying. Yes.
When you were first turned down by Hollywood, what was the impetus for you to return?
When I was first turned down by Hollywood, what was it?
You went to study astronomy. What made you stop studying astronomy and go back to doing film and just continue with that?
Okay. I went to Holland, and I was studying astronomy in Holland, and one day I came in, and there was an envelope. And that envelope was from the Cinematheque in France. And inside the envelope was a thing saying, "What the hell are you doing, sir? We've just seen your films. They're genius, etc., etc. You must come to France." What had happened was when I was going to take the boat to Holland, there was a guy, a wonderful man named Amos Vogel, who was really a cinephile, who loved cinema. And Amos Vogel, look who we got. He finally showed up. There you are. Hey, today. Skip.
What are you lying about now?
Yeah. Everything.
I heard you're doing a good job.
Okay. Amos Vogel took the film, my short films, and years ago, this is before cassettes, before any of this thing, there would be people who really loved cinema, and they'd rent the gym or some places like that, and they would show the movies. And this guy would travel around the country showing these little independent filmmakers' films. So this guy had been recognized by France. Now, the reason film museums are called the Cinémathèque, Cinémathèque is in honor of Henri Langlois, who was the first person who thought of cinema as an art, as seriously. And he formed this cinema museum. And he would look around the world for lovers of cinema. And he looked at this Amos Vogel, who was a lover of cinema, and invited Amos to come to France and bring some of his film. Amos Vogel went to France bringing some of his film, and what does he say? He may not come when you call him, always right on time. Anyway, he brought my films with him, among the other films. These people saw my films and went ape shit over them, and they called me, or they wrote to me in Holland. So that's how I hitchhiked to France. Yes, sir.
Just to give a little feedback on your film, like in my 20s in LA, a bunch of us fellas went to see it, and it was sort of like a rite of passage, because when it hit like a big explosion, and word of mouth was big. You didn't really need advertisement, but it was like in a sense, it was like Black Woodstock, I think it was accumulated or whatever. It was like politically charged, and you could identify totally with the black man who there was not even a small bit of Uncle Tom in him. And so it was like a young male rite of passage kind of thing. It was like a really beautiful experience. But on a certain level, do you resent the fact that it was taken as like a token? Because you broke
It was taken as what?
as sort of in a way as a token, like the first black person coming from the white environment. And in fact that you appeal. City Poitier had done other things like Identify Was in Love and all that. But it was still, he never stood up. He was never justifiably accused, which we all were every day in LA, flagging along here or whatever. So it was like a pure first in so many different ways. Do you ever resent the fact that it was so meaningful to us that in a sense we didn't play it like just an object to look at? It was more like something that we had to go through. It was like you had to listen to grassroots, you know, you had to listen to more certain rites of passage. It was more than just a movie. Well, not even just political, but almost like an ideological shift, a paradigm awakening that it was possible to see a black man on the screen and never feel ashamed at any point
Hello.
in that film.
Yeah. Well, the Panthers made it mandatory viewing, yeah, they had to go for all of their members. And the question: how do I feel about being a token? Well, token my ass to death, because somebody's got to do it at some stage of the game. Huh? And so, hello, and that's exactly. Tell you a story, man. The film opened on Wednesday in Detroit, and by that evening there were lines around. The evening that. And people were throwing popcorn and screaming, and people would come and bring their lunch and sit through the movie 3 times. Huh? And then the only other place in the entire United States that would show the movie was Atlanta, Georgia. What? I mean, so I go down to Atlanta, Georgia. I go down to Atlanta, Georgia, and I go into the theater. And I'm apologizing to the guy, because it's so quiet. I said, it was really big in Detroit. I'm sorry but just hang with me. So no, the theater's full. The theater's full. I go into the theater, full, and you could hear a rat pissing on cotton. The black people were sitting there, but nobody was making a sound because they were thought that it must be some kind of setup, but they were going to put in lethal gas or something. There was one seat, but you said something that was so important. There was one seat. This was on a Friday. There was one seat, and I go, and I said, there was an old lady sitting there, and it was toward the end of the movie, and Sweetback is in the desert. He's running in the desert. You ready, mama? You ready, mama? And he's out there, God, she's back. And the woman sitting, she starts talking. She said, oh, Lord, let him die. Let him die. Why? And then she finished her phrase. She said, don't let them kill him. We never got to the end of the film alive if we showed any type of manhood, any type of anything. It was inconceivable that the black guy was going to kill some cop, stand up for his manhood, and escape. Now, no, that was off. So that was one of the most proud moments in my life, because she had put her finger right then and there. Let him die. What she meant, let him die out here. Don't let them be the such and such to do it. Every time you see somebody, they be going to the lynch. Just let me, they drag me. Wait a minute, just let me get my Bible before you lynch me. Oh, give me a break. You know what I mean? And that was it. I'm sorry. Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, great.
How long or how much does somebody have to live in order to be able to tell a good story? I mean, I've heard that just coming out of college, you went behind the ears, you don't know what you're talking about. But you've lived a full life and you've done a lot of interesting things. You had some stories to tell. So how much does a person need to be kicked around to tell a good story?
Okay. It really very interesting because there's a word now thrown around, filmmaker. If we're discussing filmmaking, what most of the major part of it wrong with the filmmaking now that I see the technology has made it fairly simple is that most people are not writers. They're just making film. Oh, we're going to move today. Why don't we film that? We'll make that into a feature. You know what I mean? Or we're going to, and they expect you to watch that. Now, so I'm asking you, because to come back to the question, when you say write, do you mean cinematic or do you mean writing, pure writing? Which was it?
Well, I would say writing.
Fine. Okay. I just wanted to go. Okay. No. It depends what you're writing about. If you write about what you know and you have a feeling about it, and it's an interesting feeling about it, and your optic does not have to be one of somebody with a white beard and 95 years old. If you have an interesting take on it, you can listen to some of the writing, for example, say like of a Dylan, you know what I mean, or some of the other people. No, you don't have, but just to be writing, to be doing the other part of it is something else. There's a new movie that's coming out about me called, I mentioned yesterday, How to Eat Your Watermelon in White Company and Enjoy It. Now, well, I guess I was 24 when I wrote that. Wrote that essay. And I read the other day, and it's great. Because the idea was the guy wrote that you needed to be integrated and lose your cultural, etc. Well, and I differed with that. Depends what you got to say. You don't have to be any of these things. Depends where you're coming from. If it's interesting, if it isn't, outlook and intelligence are like breasts. They come out at different times in different people. And when you're ready, you're ready. Yes.
I'd like to know. Finally, our textbooks.
Stand up, please, honey. They can't hear you.
Finally, I feel our textbooks are actually doing a semi-good job at being complete on their teachings of things that have gone on in history. And at this point in your life, where people really look at you as an idol and as someone who's really a sense of inspiration. Yesterday you talked a little bit about how you don't want to be seen as, oh, he was this, he was that. You're a real person as well. So my question for you is, how would you like to go down in history?
How would I like to go down in history? I would like to just, I think I would have to go to Little Esther, Etta James. She said, no, 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 don't put no headstone on my grave. All my life I've been a slave. That's, I mean, sometimes I have people that have different names. They say, well, that was my slave name. And I said, well, I didn't see any reason to change it. Maybe you know something I don't know, but I ain't seen no reason to change it yet. You know what I mean? I'm already down in history when I see a young person or an old person, someone from goodwill feel empowered by some of my work. That's close enough for me. I could give less than a doo-doo about the rest. Hmm? Yes, ma'am. A question about what, dear?
Your son's movie, Badass.
Yes?
What was it like for you to watch the film, and are there any differences in what he portrayed and how you actually experienced it?
The question was my son's film, Badass. Well, Mario called me and said, hey, Dad, and he had just finished doing, playing in Ali, where he played Malcolm. And he said, Dad, you know, they're making a movie about the first black power athlete, and it thought it'd be great to do one about you, and using your book, because when I was doing the Sweetback, I kept a journal because, of course, people are going to be lying. I said, no, man, you're lying, Melvin. So I kept a journal and all the things that happened. And so my son called and asked me about that, and I said, fine. I said, okay, pay me. What do you mean? I said, pay me for the book. You want to use the book, pay me. He said, but Dad, hey. Business is business. So he bought the rights to the book, and I gave him the same politeness that I would have given anyone else. I didn't. The only thing he said to me, he said, Dad, you know, they're saying you got to make your father more this or that, kinder. So I said, yeah, man, you do whatever you want to do. You bought the book, yours. And that's what happened. And then I didn't see the movie. I came on the set one day for one shot, and that was it. I was in Toronto, and Mario was very mischievous. And he said, come on, Dad, for the first screen of the movie. We're watching the movie, and everything's going along, and the interesting part is it's 100% accurate. This is what happened. And he made some of the things that were just so outrageous down a little bit, but this is what happened. Except there's this one scene where me and this guy is in bed together. And I started looking at my son like, now wait a minute, I'm on the down low here, son. You understand what I'm trying to say? and he was watching me out of the corner of his eyes. And then the two girls came out from the cupboard. You know, but that's Mario and I. And he asked me what I thought. I said, I thought it was like Seabiscuit on 2 feet. I mean, it was. I mean, it was. You know, the little horse that couldn't do it, he did it. Huh? Yeah. And that's what happened. It was great. It was fun. I thought it was terrific.
White filmmakers have traditionally been unfortunate in that they've tended to depict black images of people, the images of black people in America tend to fall in either two camps. It's either been an exploitive image, which is either, you know, like the kind of crime, drugs image, or the gone with the wind man image. Or it's in an attempt to avoid that, it's been kind of the Stanley Kramer, liberalism, you know, main black character will be the same image. What would you suggest to white filmmakers? You know, what would your advice be to say right now? How can you navigate between those two poles and realistically and authentically depict black people, black life in America, and not fall into one of those areas?
Well, ain't all that hard. Just get your shit together. You saw Ray, didn't you? Did you see Ray? Ray. The guy was white. I thought he was right on. As people drop. I saw this painter in France recently, and there were these exotic venues of Africa, black people, but they weren't painted exotic. They were just painted like real people. So, whoa, who was this? And of course, it was black Amalomi or something like that name. So, turns out it was a white girl who had been raised as a black person. Her mother had married her first dad and then the second dad, so she was raised down, and so she saw blacks as just straight up human beings. She didn't see the picaresqueness, anything in it like that. It just depends on the person. And now it's time, just like yourself. I would imagine that if you make a film, etc., you will probably, having recognized the old stereotypes or the this or the that or the other, man, you'll just make them like your buddy next door or something. These things can be overcome, just like they said in South Pacific. You've got to be taught to hate. That's all.
Besides Ray, can you name any other authentic representations?
I'm sorry, sir?
Besides the movie Ray.
But, sir, I'm not your basic Negroologist. I answered you once. Shut the fuck up. No. Now let me explain to you something. When I was a kid, I'm sitting in the class, and somebody would say, my teacher would say, Melvin, George Washington Carver died when? I don't know, sir. Louis Armstrong, does he play a cornet too? So finally one day I remember that I said, does President Truman have all his teeth? I said, how would I know? So you white, ain't you? So quit asking me every question I'm supposed to know about every black. I answered you once, so let it slide. You understand me? Don't get on my last good nerve with that shit. What? Make sense? Can I hear an amen from the church? Amen? Once again, please. Do Jesus. All right, let's move on. Yes, sir.
Just to follow up on that, did you think Crash was a good movie?
Crash? Didn't see it. No. And what I do very well, I never see anything. I see everything, but I tell you I didn't, so I don't have to say shit about it. One way or the other. Guys, but one thing, please, there's so much fun or levity in the world. Do not let your mantle get heavy. I was explaining, I said something to someone the other day, when the third time I had made some bread, and I said, okay, I think I'm going to keep some of it this time. I went out, my chauffeur called me from Dorchester Hotel in London. He says, Mr. Van Peebles, your car is waiting, your Rolls Royce. And I was frightened. I didn't understand my fear. But I had always been taught, if you make it, you're going to turn into be this. So I went and had my tattooed around my neck, Lynch here. So I would never forget. Because I didn't have no one that I could talk to that I saw who had made it. I couldn't talk. I didn't know anybody. And I wanted to be sure that I wouldn't take my shit south. You understand? But let me be here to tell you, one of the most important things to remember is you do not have to be anything but regular, even if you get to the other side. And that's very important. I personally feel, when I used to be the bouncer, you asked me a question yesterday about theater. At Ain't Supposed to Die, we needed a bouncer because the audience, who was my followers, were not used to hard ticket sale. And so they would come to the theater early with their KFC and so forth, sit down, get a seat, and about shows getting ready to go. And guy said, I'm sorry, sir, you have to move. Well, what do you mean? I was here first. You know what I mean? And somebody had to be able to talk to these people, and if they got ferocious, had to handle it. But many times kids would be coming out, man, that was a great movie. They couldn't say play. It wasn't in their vocabulary. And somebody would point me out and say, you know who that is? That's the guy who wrote it, produced it. I said, shit, if he can do it, I can do it too. That's the most positive thought. That was the most positive thought. If he can do it, I can do it too. And this is what is so necessary to make it accessible. It is not rocket science, everything, et cetera, et cetera. It has to be accessible to the people to understand that it is possible. And that's a major message. I mean, Marshall McLuhan said it. Huh? The medium is the message. The medium is the message. Okay? Okay, guys. But guys, now listen. Do me one favor. You got any questions? Don't ask me aside. You can't stand up here and ask me in front of everybody. Don't get on my last good nerve with that shit. But you see, I'm ask me now. Okay. How are you guys? How you doing? I'm fine. Yeah. Yeah. That was great.